My name is Rachel Lawson, and I was 33 years old the night my family decided my body belonged to them. It happened on Easter. The ham sat in the middle of the table, still hot. The sweet smell filled the room. My grandmother's old lace tablecloth covered the table like it always did on special days. Everyone was smiling. Everyone looked happy. And then my sister slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. A pen rested on top. "We just need your signature tonight," she said softly. My mother nodded. My father nodded too. The papers were already printed. Already prepared. Already waiting for my name. What none of them remembered was that reading contracts was my job. And by the time that pen reached me, I had already read page 4. But before I tell you what happened at that table, you need to understand how we got there. Because nothing about this happened by accident. Not one thing. I work as a senior claims appeals specialist for a hospital network in Springfield, Ohio. Most people have no idea what that means. It means I spend my days reading the fine print nobody else reads. Insurance denials. Liability clauses. Payment agreements. The boring pages everyone skips. I read the sentences people hope you never notice. I started at the front desk years ago. I worked hard. Studied at night. Earned certifications. Moved up one step at a time. Now I spend my days finding hidden details that can cost people thousands of dollars. It taught me something important. The most dangerous sentence in any contract is usually the one nobody bothers reading. My family knew I was good with paperwork. Whenever someone had a problem, they called me. If a bill looked wrong, they sent it to me. If a contract needed reading, they handed it to me. I never complained. Helping people felt good. Helping family felt right. But over time, something changed. People stopped seeing me as a person. They started seeing me as a solution. A tool. Someone who fixed problems. Someone who always said yes. And when you always say yes, people eventually stop asking. They start expecting. That expectation is what led to Easter. 5 months before that dinner, my marriage ended. There was no screaming. No cheating. No huge betrayal. It was simply over. Some relationships end with explosions. Mine ended with silence. I needed a place to stay while I found an apartment. My older sister Renee offered her guest room. I was grateful. Very grateful. I stayed there 6 weeks. Not 6 months. 6 weeks. And I did everything I could to avoid being a burden. I bought groceries. Cooked meals. Fixed their broken washer. Cleaned dishes. Paid for household items. I kept track because that's how my brain works. When I finally moved into my own apartment, I felt like everything was even. No debts. No favors owed. No unfinished business. But my mother saw it differently. Months later she still brought it up. "After everything Renee did for you." She said it so often I could practically finish the sentence myself. I usually stayed quiet. There was no point arguing. My mother never let go of old favors. She stored them like receipts. I didn't realize she was saving this one for a specific purpose. A purpose that would eventually involve my body, my future, and $58,000. The truth is I loved my sister. And that is what made everything harder. 2 years earlier, Renee had undergone an emergency hysterectomy. The surgery saved her life. But it took away her ability to carry children. I watched her break apart afterward. I watched her cry. I watched her grieve. I sat beside her in waiting rooms. Drove her to appointments. Held her hand through disappointment after disappointment. Before the surgery, doctors helped Renee and her husband Trent create embryos. There was still hope. They could use a surrogate. Someone else could carry the baby. For a while, they tried. They hired surrogates through agencies. 3 separate embryo transfers. 3 failures. Each one cost money. Lots of money. Each failure hurt more than the one before. I saw what it did to Renee. And honestly, if someone had asked me back then whether I would help her, I probably would have considered it. That is why their plan almost worked. Because it wasn't built on cruelty. It was built on guilt. And guilt can be much harder to fight. The first warning sign came from Trent. My brother-in-law rarely called me. Maybe twice a year. Usually for paperwork questions. So when my phone rang one Tuesday afternoon and his name appeared, I answered. "Hey Rachel," he said casually. We chatted for a minute. Then he asked a strange question. "Got anything big planned this year?" I frowned. "Not really." "You settled into your new place?" "Yeah." "Good." A pause. Then he said it. "So you're pretty free then?" Free. The word bothered me. I couldn't explain why. But it sat heavily in my stomach. The next day I mentioned it to my coworker Dana. Dana had worked in claims nearly as long as I had. She laughed. "People don't ask if you're free unless they're about to put something on your calendar." I laughed too. But she was right. In my job, strange questions are rarely random. People gather information before making requests. They prepare. They test the ground. Looking back, Trent wasn't making conversation. He was checking availability. Seeing whether I had anything that might interfere with his plans for me. 2 weeks later, my mother called. "Don't forget Easter," she said. "I won't. Everyone's coming." Her voice sounded unusually excited. "Renee and Trent will be here. Your father. Grandma Lorraine too." That got my attention. Grandma Lorraine was 84. The family matriarch. When Grandma showed up, it meant something important was happening. Then my mother added another sentence. "The family wants to talk about something good." My stomach tightened. Something good. People always said that right before something difficult. "What is it?" I asked. "We'll talk Sunday." Then she changed the subject. I hung up feeling uneasy. In my profession, you learn to recognize patterns. A family gathering. The matriarch present. A surprise discussion. No details beforehand. That wasn't a conversation. That was a planned event. And whatever it was, they wanted witnesses. For a moment I considered skipping Easter entirely. But curiosity won. A few days later I stopped by Renee's house to return a casserole dish. She wasn't home yet. Trent answered the door. He was distracted. Busy. Talking on the phone. He waved me inside while he finished his call. I carried the dish into the kitchen. Then I heard a printer running. Paper after paper after paper. The sound came from Trent's office. As I turned to leave, I glanced through the partially open door. Only for a second. But that second was enough. At the top of the page sat a bold title. Gestational Carrier Agreement. I froze. Gestational carrier. Surrogacy. Before I could look closer, Trent stepped in front of the doorway. "Work stuff," he said quickly. I smiled. "Okay." Then I left. But once I reached my car, I sat there staring through the windshield. A surrogacy contract. Already printed. Already prepared. Nobody had asked me anything yet. Nobody had discussed becoming a surrogate. Yet somehow the contract already existed. That told me everything. This wasn't going to be a request. It was going to be a decision. One they expected me to accept. That night I called Frank Okafor. Frank had handled my divorce. He was smart. Direct. And impossible to fool. I explained everything. The contract. The printer. My concerns. Frank listened quietly. Then he said something I'll never forget. Rachel, never sign a surrogacy agreement written by the other side's lawyer. I blinked. Never? Never. His voice was firm. Each side should have independent legal representation. Always. What if it's family? Family makes it worse. I sat silently. Frank continued. They'll expect you to trust them. I thought about my mother. My sister. Trent. The Easter gathering. The mysterious conversation. The pressure. And suddenly everything felt clearer. Promise me you won't sign anything immediately, Frank said. I promise. After we hung up, I made a decision. No matter what happened on Easter, I would not sign anything at that table. Not a single page. Not a single initial. I would read first. Think second. Decide third. The next evening Renee finally called. Her voice sounded careful. Gentle. Mom probably hinted about Sunday. Maybe. She laughed softly. We have one more chance. There it was. The conversation. The request. The dream. She explained how they still had embryos. How much she wanted a child. How special it would be if family helped family. Then she finally said it. We think you might be the answer. I listened quietly. She talked about hope. Love. Sacrifice. Family. Then she said something that immediately caught my attention. I'll email you a draft tonight. A draft. Not a question. Not a discussion. A draft. As though my participation was already expected. I asked a simple question. Who's representing me legally? Silence. Then a laugh. Oh, come on, Rachel. Her voice sounded dismissive. Family doesn't need lawyers. The moment she said it, alarms went off inside my head. Family doesn't need lawyers. Only people who already hired lawyers say that. Just read it, she said. We'll make everything official Sunday. Official. Another interesting word. The email arrived an hour later. Attached was a 31-page PDF. I poured a glass of water. Sat at my kitchen table. And opened the file. The first pages looked normal. Definitions. Medical requirements. Lifestyle expectations. Communication rules. Everything seemed reasonable. Almost too reasonable. That's what bothered me. The opening sections felt polished. Comforting. Designed to lower defenses. Most people would stop paying attention right there. Most people would skim. Most people would assume the rest was fine. But contracts don't hide danger on page 1. They hide danger where nobody looks. So I kept reading. Carefully. Slowly. One sentence at a time. Around page 3, my mother called. Did you read it? I'm reading now. She sounded pleased. Then she delivered the sentence she had probably rehearsed for weeks. You owe Renee. I closed my eyes. There it was. The 6 weeks. The debt. The guilt. She let you stay with her after your divorce. I stayed quiet. She has suffered enough, Rachel. My mother's voice softened. This is the least you can do. The least. Carry a pregnancy. Risk my body. Maybe my health. Maybe my future. And apparently that was the least. I didn't argue. There was no point. Instead I said something simple. I'm reading everything carefully. Good, she replied. You always do the right thing. After hanging up, I stared at the contract. Suddenly I understood. Nobody was asking anymore. In their minds, I had already agreed. Sunday wasn't a discussion. It was a ceremony. And somewhere inside those 31 pages was the reason they didn't want me reading too closely. So I kept going. Page after page. Line after line. Searching for the section that mattered most. The section that always reveals the truth. The section about responsibility. The section about money. Eventually I found it. Page 4. Section 4.3. Carrier liability and indemnification. The moment I saw the title, something inside me tightened. I leaned closer. Started reading. Slowly. Carefully. And within seconds, my blood turned cold. I stared at page 4. At first, I thought I must be misunderstanding it. That happens sometimes with legal documents. You read a sentence. It looks terrible. Then you read it again and realize it means something completely different. So I read it again. Then again. Then a fourth time. The meaning never changed. The words stayed exactly the same. And every time I read them, they became worse. The contract said that if I became the surrogate, I would personally be responsible for uncovered medical expenses. Not just future expenses. Past expenses too. The language was broad. Very broad. Broad enough to include failed fertility treatments that happened before I was ever involved. I grabbed a calculator. Started adding numbers. Transfer costs. Medical bills. Outstanding fertility debt. Penalties. The total climbed higher and higher. When I finished, I sat back in my chair. $58,000. I stared at the number. Then stared at it again. $58,000. They wanted me to carry a baby for free. Risk my body. Risk my health. And take responsibility for nearly $60,000 of debt. The contract protected Renee and Trent from almost everything. The risk belonged to me. The costs belonged to me. The liability belonged to me. The baby belonged to them. I felt sick. Not because I had discovered a mistake. Because I knew this wasn't a mistake. Someone had written this intentionally. Someone wanted these terms exactly as they appeared. I called Dana immediately. She answered on the second ring. What's wrong? I read the clause aloud. When I finished, there was silence. Then Dana spoke. Rachel. Yeah? That's not a gift. I laughed bitterly. No. That's an invoice. I looked down at page 4 again. Dana was right. This wasn't a surrogacy agreement. It was a debt transfer. A financial trap hidden inside a family request. The next day Renee texted me. Did you get a chance to read the draft? I thought carefully before answering. If I told her what I found, they would have time to change everything before Easter. They would rewrite it. Hide it better. Pretend I misunderstood. So I kept my response simple. Still reading. Her reply came immediately. Don't overthink it. It's straightforward. Straightforward. I almost laughed. Then another message appeared. Family doesn't need lawyers. There it was again. The same sentence. The same pressure. The same warning. A few minutes later she added. We'll make it official Sunday. Not if I had anything to say about it. That evening my father called. Which was unusual. My mother normally handled family conversations. Dad cleared his throat. Your mother says you're helping Renee. I said nothing. It's a good thing you're doing. I asked him a simple question. Have you read the contract? Silence. No. Then how do you know it's a good thing? Another pause. I trust them. The answer made me sad. Because my father wasn't part of the plan. He was simply trusting the people he loved. Trusting people who hoped nobody would read page 4. Saturday became preparation day. I printed the entire contract. All 31 pages. Then I highlighted every dangerous sentence. Every hidden liability. Every financial transfer. Every clause that pushed responsibility onto me. By the time I finished, page 4 glowed yellow. It looked like a crime scene. Then I researched Ohio surrogacy law. Everything I found pointed in the same direction. Fair agreements protect the surrogate. Fair agreements require independent attorneys. Fair agreements do not transfer old fertility debt. The more I read, the angrier I became. Not because they asked. Because they hid. Because they manipulated. Because they counted on me not reading. By Saturday night I was ready. Not ready to fight. Ready to tell the truth. Sunday arrived. I reached my parents' house early. The house smelled like Easter. Ham. Bread. Desserts. Family. Normal. Warm. Safe. At least on the surface. While carrying deviled eggs toward the kitchen, I heard voices coming from the dining room. My mother's voice. Renee's voice. Trent's voice. They hadn't seen me. So I stopped. And listened. "Don't let her focus on the money," Trent said. My stomach tightened. My mother answered immediately. "I'll remind her about staying with Renee after the divorce. The 6 weeks. Of course. Their favorite weapon." Then Renee spoke. Softly. Almost guiltily. "I hate that we have to manage her like this." Manage her. Not ask. Not discuss. Manage. Trent answered quickly. "We're helping her do the right thing." I stood frozen. Listening. Feeling something inside me break. Not because they wanted something. Because they had a strategy. Talking points. Pressure tactics. Emotional leverage. They weren't planning a conversation. They were planning an operation. A controlled outcome. I walked into the kitchen moments later wearing a smile. Nobody suspected a thing. The trap remained intact. For now. Around 2 o'clock Grandma Lorraine arrived. The moment she entered the house, the atmosphere changed. Everyone loved Grandma. Everyone respected Grandma. And she loved family more than anything. She found me almost immediately. Grabbed my hands. Smiled warmly. "Rachel." Her eyes sparkled. "I'm so proud of you." I felt my heart sink. She had already been told. Already convinced. Already prepared. For giving your sister this gift. There it was. The story they gave her. Generous Rachel. Loving Rachel. Selfless Rachel. Nobody had mentioned page 4. Nobody had mentioned $58,000. Nobody had mentioned liability. Only the beautiful version. The fake version. I squeezed her hands. "I love you, Grandma." It was all I could say. Dinner started around 3. Everyone gathered around the table. Cousins. Aunts. Uncles. Children. Laughter filled the room. And next to my plate sat a stack of papers. The contract. Already waiting. Nobody mentioned it. Not yet. That was intentional. Let everyone eat first. Let everyone relax. Then apply pressure. I ate slowly. Watching. Waiting. Feeling the highlighted copy inside my jacket. Finally Trent stood. Tapped his glass. The room quieted. "I'd like to make a toast." Everyone smiled. He raised his glass. "This family has helped us through some difficult years." His voice became emotional. "And thanks to the most generous person at this table." He looked directly at me. "We're finally getting our miracle." Glasses lifted. People smiled. My mother wiped tears. Renee cried. Everyone celebrated. Everyone except me. Because nobody had asked whether I agreed. They were celebrating a decision I never made. Then Renee pushed the contract toward me. A pen rested on top. We just need your signature. The room watched. Every face. Every eye. Every expectation. My mother leaned closer. It's the right thing. My father nodded. Grandma smiled hopefully. The pressure was enormous. That was exactly how they designed it. A public yes. A public commitment. A public surrender. I looked at the pen. Then the contract. Then the people I loved. And suddenly I felt calm. Very calm. I picked up the pen. The entire table relaxed. They thought they had won. Then I turned directly to page 4. The room froze. I looked at Trent. Then Renee. Then everyone else. Before I sign anything, I said calmly, I have one question. Nobody spoke. Who is my attorney? Silence. Trent forced a laugh. It's just paperwork. Family doesn't need lawyers? I asked. His smile faded. My mother jumped in. Don't make this complicated. I read contracts for a living, I said. The room became quieter. Then I reached inside my jacket. And pulled out my highlighted copy. Everything changed. I watched Renee's face lose color. Watched Trent tense. Watched my mother suddenly look nervous. I opened the contract. Turned to page 4. And began reading. First I explained how normal surrogacy agreements work. Then I explained how this one worked. Then I read the actual language aloud. Every sentence. Every clause. Every liability. Every hidden cost. When I finished, I looked around the room. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence felt endless. Then I said the number. $58,000. Several people gasped. My aunt covered her mouth. My uncle lowered his fork. My father looked shocked. And Grandma Lorraine slowly turned toward Renee. The disappointment in her eyes was heartbreaking. You were going to make your sister sign this? Renee immediately started crying. Grandma, that's not. Did you read it? Grandma interrupted. Renee couldn't answer. Because she hadn't. The silence said everything. Trent stood up suddenly. You're twisting it. His face had turned red. You're taking it out of context. I remained calm. Then let's read the context. And I read it again. Word for word. Line by line. Slowly. Clearly. There was no misunderstanding. No confusion. No alternate interpretation. The contract said exactly what I said it did. Grandma looked furious. Not at me. At them. You wanted her body and her money. Nobody answered. Because nobody could. Then Trent exploded. He slammed his hand against the table. Silverware jumped. Wine spilled onto Grandma's lace tablecloth. You think you're smarter than everyone. His voice echoed through the room. I didn't react. I simply placed my highlighted copy beside the original contract. Side by side. So family doesn't need lawyers? I asked quietly. Nobody answered. Interesting. Because somebody hired one. That hit harder than anything else. Because it was true. They had legal help. They simply didn't want me having any. Renee looked shattered. For the first time, she wasn't angry. She looked ashamed. I didn't read it like that, she whispered. I just wanted a baby. And I believed her. At least partly. But wanting something doesn't excuse hurting someone. Not even family. I took a deep breath. Then spoke carefully. I'm not saying I would never help. The room looked surprised. Including Renee. I love my sister. Tears filled her eyes. I want her to be happy. I paused. But never like this. Nobody spoke. If I ever became a surrogate, it would be through a fair agreement. I looked directly at Trent. Separate attorneys. Then Renee. Independent representation. Then everyone else. And every financial responsibility belongs to the intended parents. Silence. Because everyone understood. The real reason they wanted me wasn't just family. It was money. A proper arrangement would cost them more. Much more. Then I turned toward my mother. You keep saying I owe Renee. My voice remained steady. I owed 6 weeks. My mother looked away. I paid for groceries. I continued. I fixed things. I helped. I never owed my body. Silence. I never owed $58,000. My father finally spoke. His voice sounded broken. I didn't read it. Nobody responded. He stared at the tablecloth. I trusted them. For once, he looked truly ashamed. And honestly? That hurt more than Trent's anger. Because Dad wasn't trying to manipulate me. He simply stopped paying attention. I stood. Slowly. Calmly. No yelling. No drama. No scene. I gathered my purse. Left the contract on the table. Left the pen untouched. The signature line remained blank. Exactly where it belonged. Then I kissed Grandma on the forehead. She squeezed my hand tightly. No words. Just understanding. Finally. I walked to the door. Then stopped. One last sentence. The pen is still there. I looked around the room. The day you'd let your own sister sign this contract is the day I'll sign it too. Then I left. The drive home was quiet. No tears. No triumph. Just relief. A deep relief. Like putting down something heavy you've carried too long. The weeks afterward were surprisingly calm. There was no family war. No screaming. No endless arguments. The contract simply died. Nobody else would support it. Especially not Grandma Lorraine. She made that very clear. My mother called a few days later. It wasn't exactly an apology. More like an attempt to soften what happened. But even she sounded shaken. The number had changed everything. $58,000. Once everyone heard it aloud, the illusion collapsed. Trent never called. I wasn't surprised. Renee waited almost 3 weeks. Then one evening my phone buzzed. A text message. Short. Simple. Painfully honest. I'm sorry I let Trent put a number on you. I stared at the screen. Then kept reading. I should have read it myself. Another pause. Then the final sentence. I love you. Tears filled my eyes. Not because everything was fixed. Because it wasn't. Some damage never completely disappears. But it was a start. I typed slowly. I love you too. Then another message. My door is open for you. I paused. Then added one final sentence. Not for that contract. She understood. We were different now. Not broken. Not whole. Just honest. Maybe for the first time in years. Looking back, Easter didn't cost me money. I kept my money. I kept my health. I kept my future. What I lost was something else. The belief that family would never put a price on me. That illusion disappeared forever. But maybe that's okay. Because what replaced it was stronger. A boundary. A line. A truth. And everyone in that room watched me draw it. The funny thing is that my entire family built a plan around one assumption. They assumed I wouldn't read page 4. That was the foundation of everything. The pressure. The guilt. The witnesses. The toast. The pen. The celebration. It all depended on me skipping one page. One page. That's all. Instead, I read it. And that changed everything. So if there's one lesson in my story, it's this. Real love never asks you to stop thinking. Real love never asks you to ignore warning signs. And real love never asks you to skip reading your own page 4. Because the people who truly love you won't be afraid of what you'll find there.